What has happened in Nepal, we need to be very careful about. I called it out first that it is not protest that's happening in Nepal, it is a deep state conspiracy. There is more than meets the eye. And now we have the admission. One of the protesters, and I'll run his visuals now, who got shot in the face and chest during the recent unrest, says that the protest was infiltrated. I'm not saying it. One of the lead protesters there, he says this was infiltrated, criminals entered it, and there were elements managing this unrest. This was in the course of a podcast with Niranjan. I want to play out a clip of that podcast. Do we have the clip? Okay, I think I'll just pull out the clip in a while. But before that, I welcome Kamal Sibbal, our former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, and Rami Desai, well-known author and policy analyst. Thank you, Rami. And Dushyant Sridhar also with us today. Now, I have not run the news story, but I'll tell you the sum total of it, Dr. Sibbal, that the students are coming out, the protesters are coming out and saying that we had something in mind. At some stage, it was orchestrated, it was infiltrated, and it was being organized from outside. That admission is very important. How do you view it, sir, Mr. Sibbal, and what are your concerns for India?
Couple of points. One is that our neighborhood has got very highly disturbed. Of course, Pakistan was always a problem, but we saw Sri Lanka disturbed, Bangladesh disturbed, and now Nepal highly disturbed. And it is the youth that have led the movements in these three countries. And there has been the same kind of arson in different degrees in the three countries. In Sri Lanka, if you remember, they burned down the residence of Vikramasinghe.
Yeah.
And in Bangladesh, they burned down anything that was connected to Mujibur Rahman,
yes,
trying to efface the history of the liberation movements. And in Nepal, they've gone even further. They have burned down the parliament, they burned down the residences of the prime minister. They have attacked physically. And this is something new. The former prime ministers, foreign ministers, finance ministers, beaten them publicly, extremely ugly. Now, who would be interested in destabilizing our neighborhood? Of course, there's no clear answer, and one has to be a little careful about conspiracy theories. But this has happened. And behind this is social media and the mobilization that occurs through social media. Now, who controls this social media? That we know. Other than that, we've seen. Now, again, I don't want to unnecessarily blame any country, but we know that US has been very active in Sri Lanka. It's been much more visibly active in Bangladesh. They wanted Hasina out, they got Hasina out. They put Yunus as prime minister there, they parachuted him there. And in Nepal, as you know, a few years ago, they insisted that Nepal accepts $450 million or something, for some programs in Nepal, which included this is not the core of it, promoting atheism in Nepal. In other words, strengthen the secular state. So all this perhaps was being done by lobbies. I don't necessarily mean the US government, but lobbies in the democracy promotion lobbies in the United States organizations who may be trying to inculcate in the society certain views and thinking, political and social, which then creates an atmosphere in which these things can erupt, especially if the governance is poor, is corrupt.
But it's been happening in India also, Mr. Sibbal. Sorry to interrupt. In Nepal, in 2022, Samantha Paz, who's known for regime change, she was the then administrator of USAID. She commits $60 million, not a small amount. That'd be about 500 crore rupees, maybe in today's terms, or maybe more, 600, 700 crores in today's terms, to quote-unquote strengthen democratic institutions and civil society in Nepal. Very trendy words, Gen Z, civil society, democratic institutions, blah, blah, blah. Now, in India also, Rami, after Narendra Modi's third term was, the elections in which the BJP got a reduced majority, the US embassy organized paid events where certain YouTubers and influencers were called to carry out and their sponsorships. Money has been given to Indian journalists, people who run websites and YouTubes. Lots of thousands of US dollars are given to sort of strengthen democratic institutions. How do we know the same attempts are not being made here in India? And how do we de-link the money spent by US aid towards things like what they call strengthening inclusive democracy, another 20 million, supporting civil society and media, ambiguous investment 18.5 million, big money bolstering local elections. These are all direct interference, and it's happening here in India as well. So what are your thoughts, Rami?
Arnab, good evening. First of all, it's great to be back on your show. But
Yes.
I remember very well during the CA protests that I was on your show very often, and we used to look at this very deeply and very minutely of how strategically and it was almost as if a map had been laid down, not just for NGOs, but certain voices and international media organizations to misrepresent what the law itself was about. I still remember a very important magazine from the United Kingdom who had its India correspondent write that the CA will not just impact the minorities in India, but it would disproportionately impact the female minorities because they don't have any documentation. This is the kind of stuff that was published. When we look at Bangladesh also, I think observers like me who look at South Asia had started writing about international interference 2 years before the regime change happened. I think it was there for everybody to see. And when the US aid finances were brought out in public post the Trump dispensation coming into power, it was made very clear that there were student groups that were being supported, there was money being funneled through NGOs, and we have seen this happen over and over again. This is just Bangladesh, that is just CAA, but even if you look at Myanmar, US aid was funding the resistance, the NUG, the National Unity Government in Exile, wherein it has not much to do with a country so far away from its geographical location or imagination. So we have to sort of accept that, whether this is a lobby or you want to call it a group of people or you want to call it corporations, but there is a concerted effort to have influence in countries that they may have certain vested interests in. And I think to completely disregard that as a conspiracy theory, and yes, I agree with Ambassador Sibbal that, we have to be wary of conspiracy theories, but to completely disregard it is also probably...
It's not a conspiracy theory. It may sound, because I'll put it this way, Rami, and I'll go across to Dushyant and go back to Mr. Sibbal, because it is not in the realm of our thinking or because the mainstream media does not talk about it. We sometimes say these things are conspiracy theories. However, you are an expert on the Northeast. The idea of a Christian cookie land is very real. The idea of carving out a Christian nation out of parts of Northeast, Myanmar and Bangladesh is very real. The fact that the Americans wanted to have a military base in St. Martin's Island is very real. If we say it, we'll be told you're conspiracy theorists. Now I want to go back to the playbook. The playbook used here is that you amplify it when the government tries to control it, because government panics. Then there is a curfew, shutdown, and then a government sometimes uses lethal force. Then there are casualties that delegitimizes the government, and protest then moves, elites fracture, military comes in, changeover is complete. It's a pure playbook. We've seen this repeated. Your thoughts, Dushyant, because now the students are saying, we don't know who took over. We started it, but we don't know who took over.
Namaskaram, Arnab, and namaskaram to all my fellow panelists. I heard them very carefully. I would just like to pick my points from the place where Sibalji left. Now that we are living in a very strong social media era,
Yes,
I completely trust my government, both at this and all these states, with a very robust mechanism. Probably that should be done on war footing. Even before any inflammatory video, fake video gets viral, I think it should be pulled down from the social media. So we should have a very robust social media team, because I'm sure, because we are a very young country with at least 600 to 700 million of our population less than the age of 30, who are completely hooked to social media. That is the bedrock. That is going to be the fireplace. And today being 11th September, the day when Bharadiyar, the freedom poet from Tamil Nadu, passed away, he says, Agni kunjondru kanden adai aange marappundil vaiten. He says, what causes forest fire is not a big fire, it is just a spark. So it's very important that we take note of it. And one more point, Arnab, we have three things that can always cause unrest. One is religion, second is caste, third is language. We have had some tussles in the last few years with respect to either religion or language or caste. So we should be very vigilant that foreign elements do not play their hands with these three portions. And last of all, Arnab, being a person who reads the scriptures of Sanatana Dharma, two instances. One in the Ramayana where Hanuman burns Lanka, because we saw what happened in Sri Lanka. But Hanuman, when he burned, he ensured that he did not trouble the aged, the pregnant, the women, and the couples. But when we look at the unrest that's happening across the neighborhood countries, it is not a dharmic fire. It seems to target even the civilians, and it does cause unrest amongst the commoners as well. So we should be very vigilant, because in the Mahabharata, the Panchapandavas were put into a palace and they were burnt. So we should be very vigilant about things happening around us, and that should help us solve a lot of things.
No, absolutely it should. But, we already have a smear campaign going on here in India. A lot of people are comparing what happened in Nepal to what happened in India. And for the unguided, for those who are not aware, Mr. Sibal, it's very easy to mislead them. People who are not aware, I would add one thing, and I want Mr. Sibal to come in on it, because he's a man with great experience in government. Mr. Sibal, Dushyant mentioned three things of division: religion, caste, and language. To that, would it not be also necessary to use the element of doubt, where you begin to disbelieve your country's institutions? You begin to have doubt in the country's institutions, which can then be instigated through a social media campaign. And secondly, in your years of experience in diplomacy working with foreign governments, what about the use of covert agencies to execute these matters? Doesn't it become easier than what this is? Yeah, please.
Yes, of course. The covert agencies are very active in India. The point is that, fortunately for us, we are a very, very big country. And it's very, very difficult to have a unified revolution of sorts, or agitation, street agitation, which would have all India dimension, which will then bring down the government. It's impossible in our country.
But Rahul Gandhi keeps talking about starting a fire. He says the fire will spread.
The fire will be localized in India's case. You mentioned Manipur and all that. Those are very vulnerable places. And we know that there is foreign interference there. You would recall what the previous US ambassador was saying. He was offering to help us in Manipur, which is absolutely ridiculous. In an internal matter of a sovereign country, a foreign ambassador offers help to resolve an internal issue. It was ridiculous. But fortunately, as I said, we are very big. And then, we have opposition parties which are ruling so many states in India. We have elections all the time in various states where the ruling party, the BJP, has to prove its mettle and win the elections. So there is actually a democratic process which is continuing all the time in our country.
And then, of course, we have very strong social welfare program.
I don't think they
when you use students as cannon fodder,
control over the social media.
No,
the
easiest way,
because it is absolutely imperative that we have strong control over social media, which we don't have. And
but if you have strong control over social media, you will be told you are non-democratic. So, Rami, how does one deal with that?
Arnab, I have to say this, there might be some similarities, but there are many, many differences between what's happening in Nepal and India. But the fact of the matter is, as you have pointed out, that, young impressionable minds more often than not are used to complete certain agendas. And, this legitimizing of protests that turn into anarchy, that dissent, it's okay for dissent to turn into anarchy. is a very, very dangerous precedent to set for any society. However, in this day and age of social media, in this day and age of the information warfare, I don't think it's possible to completely limit or completely safeguard ourselves. I think what really works for us, as said by the previous speaker, is the fact that we are a large enough country wherein some rationality prevails. But at times, like we've seen previously, whether it was the farmers' protests, whether it was CA, that it does go out of hand. We have to have control on international funding coming into India. I think to a large extent that has been done via the FCR becoming more stringent. I also have to look for individuals. In Manipur, Arnab, you know very well, there were international elements that were found on ground actively inciting.
Manipur, Rami, the media, the international media reached Churachangpur, I think a day before the incident actually happened. It almost as if they had advanced knowledge. My last quick word, sorry to intervene from Dushyant. Dushyant, what about this whole phrase that is oft repeated? America has told the whole world, democratic backsliding. Narendra Modi gets elected, democratic backsliding. Yogi Adityanath gets elected chief minister, democratic backsliding. Unless their own government is in place, it's democratic backsliding. So, they've used this word in Bangladesh to delegitimize the process, and now Congress is doing the same thing here.
Arnab, this is just my reaction to it. If I don't like a person, even if the person is democratically elected, I will still call it, I'll still call the process bad. I will say the system is rotten. That is true of any so-called liberal these days.
True.
So that's a playbook that is being played across countries, and they will surely raise doubts on.
They will try to.
Function. Yeah, they will try to.
They will try to, and we have to be very. I believe that when I come back at 9 o'clock, I'll tell you why, viewers. I genuinely believe that the forces are out. The dangerous YouTubers are getting excited thinking that Nepal will happen in India. We must be watchful of them and take them on through every legal means that we have when I'm back.
Time for a quick breather. Arnab will be right back with the debate.